Hello there everyone, my name is Nathan Birch. Today we're going to be going through this lesson 1 personal assignment. Usually we're not going to do this in this class where I'll just walk through an entire assignment with you. But given that it's the first week, some people are going to be joining late. There is a lot being asked here. I want to give you guys a solid starting point for this class with something to work from. If you don't want to watch this video, that's totally fine. If you do, be warned, this is a rough run, which means I haven't done any of this. I haven't done this beforehand, and so I'll just be, kind of going through these steps with you, kind of like I would in a class, or if I was actually going to do this assignment for myself. Okay, so we probably will see errors, which is good because as you guys are doing things, you will also see errors, but you'll be able to see this process from start to finish. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off by creating a GitHub repository. So I'll just head over to GitHub. And I'll hit new. I already have an account. I'll hit new and I'll just say cse341 API course code. You can call this whatever you want. This is going to be a repository that I put code for this course into. You could just call it cse341. Okay. Whatever makes sense for you. And I'll go ahead and leave those things the way they are. I'll leave that as public. I'm going to copy this link. Actually, I'll just copy this one instead. Okay. So I'm going to head over to VS Code. And I'm just going to open up this folder. Actually, I'm just going to open this up in Integrated Terminal. And I'm just going to say git clone, and I'll paste. Oh, but I should have copied that top link. I hadn't decided what I was going to do yet. I'll say git clone, and that URL, and paste it. And there's my nice folder that's been made, and that should have all the remotes attached and everything. And so there we go. All right, so that's made. I'll leave this tab open. I'll just leave it over there. Okay, use npm init to start a new node project from scratch. So if I come in here, node has to be installed for this, so I'm assuming that you've gone through all of the setup for the course. I'm just going to say cd cse341 API course /code, and I'll say npm init. Let's see here. It's going to ask me a few questions. I'm going to make our screen just a little bit bigger here. There we go. All right, so package name, if I just hit enter, it'll just leave this as the default. Okay, this is going to kind of set up my, just the data for this project. Version 1.00 is good. Description, code to give to students for the cse341 course. Entry point index.js. I'm going to say server.js. You can say index, you can say app, or server. The three of those are pretty common when working with a node project. Test command, I'll leave that as a default. Git repository, that looks good. Keywords, I'm going to leave that blank. Author, we can say Nathan Birch, and we'll just have all that the way it is. Now, if I come in here and look at this new project here, we have this package JSON, and you should see the data that we put into that package JSON kind of showing in here. Okay. All right. So I need a server.js file. So that's going to be my starting point. So I'm going to make a server.js file. Now, with this, you had a number of resources to look at. If I just go back, I'm going to click on lesson page here for a sec. Let's see here. Getting started with Node. So we're going to skip these, but hopefully you did look through these. But if doing this, right, is something very, very common that people will do with Node. And so I can actually just head over to Google and I can say Node.js simple web server example. How to create a web server in Node.js with the HTTP module. I'm actually going to put an Express in here because we're going to want to use that Express package. Hello world example, Express.js. That sounds awesome. And look at that. We have a nice simple web server here. So let me just split my screen here, and I'll kind of walk through each one of these lines of code with you so we can kind of see what's going on here. So I'm going to say const express equals require express. Now, anytime I'm requiring anything, I'm probably going to have to do an npm install. So I can see what packages are being required by my application by looking at my package JSON. And so right here I can see there aren't any what we call dependencies. And so what I'm going to do, since I'm requiring express and it isn't in my project, I'm just going to say npm I for install -- save to make sure it stays in my package JSON, and then I say the name of the package, which is just express. Okay, that'll take a second to actually install. You'll see this node modules folder pop up, package lock JSON, which we're not going to worry about right now, but everything that the express package needs to run is going to be inside of this node modules folder, and I want you to just ignore this. Speaking of ignoring this, I want Git to ignore this too. I don't want to have to push all these files up to GitHub, so I'm just going to add a git ignore right here. I'm just going to put node modules. And now that shows us kind of that muted color, not green, okay? All right, now if I look at my package.json, we should see our dependencies now. A nice object, we have Express, and it shows what version of Express we're using. Okay, so now in my server.js, when I actually try to run this, it's not gonna fail. It will be able to find my Express package. So I'm gonna create an app from here. We only have to do this once in our entire project. And then I'll give this a port to run on. Okay. Now this is an interesting one because the port is either going to be, just like a number like 3000 if I'm running it locally, but I also want it to be able to run on Heroku when I run it on Heroku. So if I just Google Node.js port that works on local or Heroku. Let's see what comes up. Deploying Node.js app to Heroku. And let's just see what they say about ports here. Oh, there's a lot here. Let's see here. Prepare the app. We'll ignore some of that for now. Yeah, that's funny. I saw it in Google. Okay, I'm gonna go back. So it's gonna be something really similar to this, right? Where we have our port or our local port. I just want to see if I can find it for you guys. Well, that's okay. I don't want to take too much time doing this. But anyways, Heroku has an environment variable called port. And so I can just say process.env.port or port 3000. So if my application finds this, which it will when I deploy to Heroku, then it'll run it on their port. Otherwise, we'll just run it on port 3000. Okay. All right. Next up, app.get rec.res res.send hello world. So let's talk about this for a second. Our application is going to be made up of what we call routes. So if I say app.get, this right here is specifying a route. In this case, it's just saying, oh, the URL is just going to be that localhost 3000 with nothing else after it. Okay, an empty URL after that localhost 3000. That's the first parameter in this get function call. The next parameter, we have this anonymous function being declared right here, and I can put anything inside this function that I want to for this second parameter. If I say res.send, what it's going to do is just return JSON, right? It's just basically going to return data, and so I can put hello world in here as just a string, but I could also just put like really anything that I want to, right? And And so we have that first route that just says, hey, if you hit my home page, basically, then we'll just display hello world. Now, if I run this now, if I was going to try to run this, I'll go ahead and save it. I can just run this by saying npm start. What that'll do is it will run the command inside of the package JSON that is under your scripts under your start script. So if I look at package.json and I look at my scripts, oh, it's actually not there. That's weird because it ran node server.js. Interesting. Well, I'm going to put it in there. So for my start scripts, I'll go ahead and just put in node server.js. I'll save that. And I don't see it running anywhere. It ran some code. It looks like it didn't run any errors, but it stopped. Okay, and if we go back and look here, it would run this code and not have any errors. It looked great, but it's not really doing anything, right? Because we don't have this listener part right here. So it's not going to actually be able to get me to a port or actually run anything with that port. You can see this color is kind of muted. It's not doing anything with it. And so I'm just going to say app.listen. App.listen, we say the port for the first parameter. And the second one, again, we have this anonymous function that Node loves to do. And I can put anything here. Usually we just like to have a console.log that'll say running on port, and then we can just say our port. Okay, and so if I save this, let me make that a little bit bigger just so we can see it easier with more ease. Okay, so that all looks good, and really that's all we need for our simple server file. Technically I don't even need this. This is just a route to say, oh, if we hit this page, then we'll send this data, but we'll leave that there. And now if I run npm start, we have node server.js, which is the command that was running on port 3000, and notice it didn't end. Okay, I should be able to come over here and go to localhost 3000, and there is our hello world. Okay, so we have effectively made our first web server. Now, every other web server that we make in this class, you'll have a few projects, will look very similar to this, right? These components will have to be here. We will add on to this quite a bit. For example, usually I don't want just like all of my routes in my app file or in my server.js file, as you see here. We're going to have a lot of different routes in our application. And so because of that, what we're going to do is actually kind of store those somewhere else. And so let me just show you a quick example of that. We're going to kind of go above and beyond just for like 2 minutes here, and then we'll bring it back. Okay, so I'm going to make a new folder, and I'll call this routes, and I'll make a new file. I could just call this like index.js or something. Okay, in this file, what I want to do is basically make that route. And so we have this route right here. I'm just going to copy that and come over here. What we're going to do, I'm going to say const routes equals, we'll say require express dot router. Okay, Express makes it really easy to handle lots of different routes in our application. And then I'm basically just going to say, okay, routes dot get, and if we just have this slash, then we'll go ahead and send that hello world. Okay, and I just need to export this. So I'll say module.exports routes. And so if I had like 50 routes in here, or even link to other route files, if I wanted to break things down further, I could. Okay, but this is how we're going to organize routes in this class, and really anytime you build a Node API. Okay, so I have this route, and now I just need to connect this back to my server file, right? And so right here, I can actually take this route out now. I don't need it. And instead, what I'm going to do is just say app.use, and I can give it my first parameter will just be a path. I could specify You know, if I was going to a route file for like customers, I could say, oh, this is going to be in the URL/customers, and then all those routes would have something after customers in them. But I'm just going to say, well, we'll use that, and I'll require ./routes. Okay. Since I named it index.js, I don't have to put index right here, and we never have to put JS. Okay. I could put index, but I can also just put routes. Okay. And so all of my routes that are in that file in index.js, or even referenced through index.js, should show up just by using this in my server file. And so you notice that my server file is really lean, right? It really only does, it basically just connects the different pieces of the application, and then it listens on a port. And that will stay true throughout this course. Okay, we'll just keep on adding little things here and there, but we'll make it so that our server file stays nice and lean. Let's make sure this actually works. Okay, so I added a new file. Anytime I add new files, I'll restart my server. Okay, so running on port 3000, we'll go ahead and run that, and it looks fine. Okay, if I come back over here, if I say hello world with a few other exclamation marks, save that. I'm going to cancel that again and run it again, and hit refresh, and there's our exclamation marks. Okay, so it is pulling it from this file, so that's awesome. All right, I had to pause for just a sec, but one thing that I wanted to show you guys, let me just close, I'll leave that there. Okay, one thing that I wanted to show you real quick is something that'll make it easier when developing your code, right? So we have our code working, but every time I make a change in my files, I have to like stop my server and restart my server, which is not enjoyable at all. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to install a package just to our dev dependencies. Okay, so I'm going to say npm I --save-dev, which will only save it to our dev dependencies. I'm going to say nodemon, the name of the package. So I'm going to save that. Now this should add this to our package JSON. And so if I look here, so we have our regular dependencies that'll be used everywhere, and then our dev dependencies, which will just be used in our development environment. Okay. Now what this does is if I change my start command to be nodemon instead of node, I'm going to stop that, and now I'll run npm start, and notice it says nodemon server.js. I can refresh this, and it looks like it's working, but we have to change this to a name, right? It says return the name of someone you know, and so I'm going to go to my route, and right here I'm just going to return the name of someone I know and hit save. Give that a sec to save, and then watch what happens down here where my server is running. It says nodemon starting node server.js, and it says restarting due to changes, so it automatically restarts my server. I can come over here, I can refresh this, and I can see that it updated, so I don't have to keep on stopping my server, which is really nice. Okay, all right, next up, push to GitHub. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'll come over here, see if I have any changes. I did push a second ago. So yeah, so I would just push to GitHub, right? You can put your message here, hit this check mark, and then hit push, and that'd be a really easy way to push to GitHub. Okay, but I can go to GitHub and ensure that my push is there. If I click on my routes and index.js, I can see that it does say Sarah Birch there, which is what I want it to say. So GitHub looks good. Done with GitHub for today. Publish to Heroku. So I'm going to start by saying publish node to Heroku, just in Google, and getting started on Heroku with Node.js. That's where I'm going to go. There's all this stuff here. It looks really great. And so if you haven't done this before, I'd recommend that you come here, right? You can click on setup and see everything you have to do. You know, you install Heroku so you can run the CLI. Really good stuff. Okay. Prepare the app. We actually have to make a Heroku app, which we could do from the CLI. I'm going to actually just do it from the Heroku dashboard. So if I go to heroku.com, I'm going to click on new, create new app, and I'm going to call this cse341 API, and click create app. And then in here, I'm just going to say connect to GitHub, and I'll say cse341 API course code, hit connect, and it'll just connect it directly to my GitHub repository. So anytime I push, excuse me, to master, I'll go ahead and enable automatic deploys from that branch. Okay, I'm gonna trigger a deploy. Actually, before I do, I want to note one other thing here. This proc file right here is stuff that you want to tell Heroku to do. And so, for example, if I want to give it a command to run, then I want to use that, right? Because the command that we're using in our package.json is this nodemon server.js, right? And Heroku is not going to be able to run that. It's going to be like, oh, we don't know what nodemon is. We don't want to do that. So there are a couple of solutions. I could have like a dev command where we use nodemon server.js, and this would just be node, okay? And when I want to run it locally, instead of saying npm start, I'd say npm dev or run dev, okay? I don't want to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a proc file, and in the proc file I can give it a command to run when it needs to run. So I'm just going to right click over here and say new file, and I'm just going to call it, that did not work. Okay, let me try that again. New file, I'm just going to call it proc file. Notice that funky Heroku symbol there, so that's good. I'm just going to say web, and I'll say node server.js, right? Because I want to just, node is just the command to run just a JavaScript file, and I want to run my server file that has my app listing on a port, and we'll also connect everything else, okay? So we have our package.json, which Heroku is going to ignore now because this proc file, well, not completely. It'll just run this command when it starts the server on Heroku's host. Okay, so I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna push this up to GitHub. I'll just say adding proc file for Heroku deploy, and I'll say sync changes. That button didn't show up the first time. It only showed up now because I pushed to a branch finally. Okay, so now over here, I just pushed to Heroku. It should be building it right now. Yeah, so it says build in progress. It noticed that I just had a push to GitHub, and so we can actually click on this and watch it do this. It says installing dependencies, installing node modules. Build succeeded. I usually doubt that is actually successful. It's usually not. So I can copy this and go to the app, or I can just hit open app right here and see what that looks like. And wow, it actually worked. So that's awesome. Okay. Then finally, if we look at our assignment, submit GitHub and Heroku links in iLearn. So the two links that I would want to include are this one right here. Okay. So if I copy that, just looks like that. Okay, there's our GitHub link. And then the Heroku link is this one. Okay, so that we can see your application running. Should look nice and simple like this. And then we can see your code in your GitHub repository. And this is what you'll do pretty much every week in this course. So, okay, well, I think that's pretty much it. I think we did it. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this.